Welcome to Hail to the Podcast, brought to you by the Maize and Blue Review. I am Trevor McCue, Senior Editor over at Maize and Blue Review, joined as always by our publisher and Intel Insider, Josh Henschke. Josh had a fun little Sunday, didn't you, bud?
Yeah, I did. Had a good time with the family for sure.
That's one way to put it.
Yep.
Obviously, another busy weekend. I would say a well-deserved break for you, sir. But I had a good day as well. Spent some time with the family. Didn't do anything at all. My favorite Father's Day gift of all time. So obviously we've got another busy weekend, another day to jump into. We appreciate you guys joining us on a Monday night. If you're live with us on YouTube, if you're listening online, we appreciate you waiting an extra day to get the podcast uploaded. But we have a lot of visitors from this weekend to review. Some news that's literally been coming in the last 10 minutes before we jumped on that we're going to get into. So we're going to do our usual kind of commit gauge, future cast gauge, where we feel we are with a few dudes. There's a lot of good there. There was some bad this weekend. Some of it I think was expected. Some of it came as a complete shock to nearly everybody. We're going to dig into that, what that means for some other Michigan targets potentially, and Michigan's recruiting at the linebacker position. And then the good, the bad, and we're calling the last part the uni. So Michael Udi, a target that was on campus this weekend. Some big news there, how that's going to impact the offensive line, a couple other players they're looking at, and then we'll kind of dig into a couple other prospects that are getting ready to make their way up to Ann Arbor as June is coming to a close. I think we're going to have a pretty busy July as well with some commits. So as always, thank you for joining us. If you're not with us live, we go live typically every Sunday at 6. We appreciate your comments and feedback in the comment section. Throw in there, we'll throw you up live with us and maybe respond to some of the questions. And also, of course, as always, join us over at michigan.rivals.com. Make sure you're subscribed so you can be a part of the Maize and Blue Review community and join us inside the den, the best I almost got through it. The best Michigan message board community. There we go. All right, let's jump right in. So I think it's pretty obvious. The good, we expected it to go well. Again, official visits don't go poorly, but the biggest name on campus this weekend that was not a commit, there were a lot of commits there, very much pushing the family atmosphere. The uncommitted biggest target was Aaron Scott, defensive back from Ohio. If you're not familiar with him yet, then I don't think you've been following recruiting at all. So let's dive in. Kid from Ohio, obviously. He's got his visit coming up with Ohio State on the 23rd. But how did the official visit go? Where do you think Michigan is? And tell me right now if he commits to Michigan. Go.
Well, I think Michigan's right there coming out of the visit. I do. I really do. I think they've always been right there. I've kind of always felt more confident that they were going to get Aaron Scott compared to Bryce West. But yeah, I mean, it's hard not to like where Michigan's sitting right now. And you mentioned it, that Ohio State visit's going to be pretty big. And, whether that, is enough to put Ohio State over the finish line, I don't know. But, I think this is as neck and neck as you can get. I mean, they've had a couple of those, and one of them is going to bounce their way eventually. But, yeah, I mean, the commits felt really good. They kind of categorized it as, it's giving it their best shot, gave them everything they got, so, and on a staff side of things, they feel good. And now, like everyone else is just kind of sweating out that Ohio State visit to see how that goes. So, yeah, at this point, it could go either way. I'm not really confident, in which direction he's going to pick, to be honest with you. I do think Michigan is right there. Oregon is going to be a factor, but I do think it's going to be an Ohio State Michigan battle. So, well, it's hard to, I can't put any official stamp of approval for one school over the other. If I were forced to pick today, I would pick Michigan, but that's just, out of necessity to pick a school. That's not, based on sourced information or anything.
I don't think he knows yet either.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Right. I've continued to frame this as maybe it's a hedge, but I don't think it is. I think Michigan being in this recruitment at this point, I muted myself there. At this point in the recruitment, Michigan even being involved, I think is a big win. and they're seriously involved. We've had some guys that come around but end up at Ohio State and never really felt like they were seriously considering Michigan. Aaron Scott's seriously considering Michigan. I kind of framed this. Somebody asked me to like do it as like a real game analogy. You know, like what's the score as of today? How would you frame it if this was a game? And I said, I think it's Michigan just took a score lead late, but Ohio State's going to have the ball last, right? I think Michigan's done better. It scored more than they expected, but now they kind of need to hope Ohio State fumbles it, right? Yeah. I mean, there's just as good a chance that Ohio State seals the deal with the visit this weekend as he goes there and thinks, you know what, my heart is still at Michigan. And I think Michigan's strategy is paying off here. They weren't putting a big push on him this week. I we'll talk about Bryce West. I think those are two guys that needed to be recruited differently. I think they just made Aaron feel like he's already a part of the family atmosphere that exists there. And like you said, they feel comfortable that they've done everything they can. But at the end of the day, we'll see, right? Coming out of this OSU visit, neither one of us are ready to make a prediction, but I think Michigan's done the best they can, and that's a win in itself, as lame as that sounds. But again, this is what's been happening on the field, bleeding into recruiting now. Mm-hmm. Same thing with, I know you've said from the beginning, Michigan probably has a better chance with Scott. Bryce West obviously plays over at Glenville for Ted Ginn Sr. in Cleveland. He will be with Scott on that visit on the 23rd. We have not confirmed yet, I don't believe, right? Unless something's changed in the last few minutes, but some rumors West was looking at potentially coming back to Michigan for an unofficial this week before his big official with Ohio State this weekend. The one thing we do know is he canceled his USC visit, and this is Michigan versus Ohio State.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think it was pretty evident, from just looking at it through the entire scope. I don't think you really needed to confirm that USC was out of it to really think that it was going to be a Michigan-Ohio State battle. But I've asked a few people, I've asked around, and I really haven't gotten anything on West taking an unofficial to Michigan midweek just yet. That involves asking some commits who don't. I had one commit say he doesn't think he's going to go, and then talking to people around the program as well, that they aren't really aware of his plans yet. So it could happen any day. The decision could come down at any minute. So this is something that we're going to keep asking about as the week goes on. But as we stand here right now on a Monday, we don't have anything yet. So we'll see. I mean, if he does make the trip, obviously gives them something to really, gives everyone something to think about. It's a great opportunity for West to kind of get his mind on Michigan before heading into the Ohio State visit, because I know a decision for him is coming in July, so he's not too far away from a decision. So, obviously we've heard so much about what this Ohio State visit could potentially do for both West and Scott, but I do think it's important as well that he's making this trip, and it kind of legitimizes the fact that this is a two-team neck-and-neck race between Michigan and Ohio State, and who knows who's got the lean right now. It could very well be Michigan's got the lean because he was the last school to visit, and then Ohio State takes it right back once he makes the trip. But both programs are prioritizing him. He's made some really strong relationships on both sides of the fence, and we'll see what the temperature's like coming out of the weekend visit. I think this is going to be really telling. And then that's not to say that he's not going to make another trip to either Columbus or Ann Arbor again when all is said and done after this weekend. But, I think this kind of where things stand right now, and this goes the same way for Aaron Scott as well. I think we'll know a lot more about where this thing is headed or how this is trending coming out of the weekend visit. I don't think it necessarily, he's been there enough times that, you won't get the sense that, oh, this is a, after visit, afterglow, that, he loves his visit or whatever. I mean, I think he's been there enough times to kind of get a sense of everything. And if So again, after this weekend, we'll have a much clearer view about where this is headed.
To me, it's like the response to the final sales pitch, right? That was very much what I heard with a lot of the stuff with Aaron Scott, right? This is where him and Klink really sat down and talked about, like, this is how I want to use you. This is how you're going to fit. Like, really got into some of the scheme stuff, right? Both of those guys, Scott and West, talking about man defense. I mean, aside from Michigan's success on the field, these guys are being recruited, or Michigan's in it because of Steve Clinkscale. I think I've said that before. I'll continue to say it. You know, Klink from Ohio and just what he's been able to do, and the guys responding to that. Michigan has an advantage there that they didn't used to have when it came to defensive back recruiting against Ohio State. What has happened the last 2 years, Klink with his development, and then just him as a recruiter. So that's going to be where I think Michigan's strategy may have paid off here, because you've got Scott, West, and then Justin Scott, the other 5-star recruit who was at Michigan with West, just was at Miami this past weekend. Going to be interesting to see. That's kind of been up and down, him in Miami. But all three of those guys are going to be at Ohio State at the same time. And I think when Ohio State scheduled this initially, they're like, hey, we're going to hit a home run with all these dudes. And now I wonder if they have too much work to do with each of them. They're not going to be able to do a blanket pitch. Are they going to have to figure out how they're going to target each one? They might have too much work to do, is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And that could hurt them in some areas. It's really interesting. And that's what I agree with you, coming out of this weekend. If we feel like Ohio State went to another level in terms of, because it's going to go well, of course it's going to go well, but if they went to another level based on some of the things we hear, then I think that's going to be a big tell.
Yeah. But I do think it's interesting too, that Michigan hasn't had both Aaron Scott and Bryce West on campus at the same time too. I do think that
interesting and intentional, probably.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it is. I mean, I think you'd rather have one come on one weekend and the other come on the other, because you don't want to, like, as you said, I think you nailed it. You don't want to you don't want to stretch yourself thin in terms of making sure these guys get the attention that you're trying to give them. And so, you know, you've got Bryce West there, pretty much the only cornerback prospect there outside of Jacob Oden, but he's, you know, a commit. So that's a totally different situation. But, you know, you've got Bryce West there last weekend, and you're able to give him the one-on-one time. Now you've got Aaron Scott here this weekend, and, you know, you've given him the one-on-one time. So yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, it's a viable question. Is Ohio State, you know, spreading themselves too thin by hosting both of these guys on the same weekend? I mean, yeah, they'll probably pitch the thing like, hey, you two can play together and be the next great duo. But do they want to play together?
Yeah.
I mean,
and I don't think there's not a grudge there.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think they're friendly, but these are two guys that have never talked about syncing up like it was a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Some people have tried to compare it to Will and Domani. I think that was different. I think Domani knew he was going to USC, and Will knew he was going to Michigan, and they were.
I don't think Domani was ever coming to Michigan.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I think Domani was saying that because he was hoping he was going to get Will to come his way.
Yeah.
But Domani was never coming to Michigan. I'm 100%. That's where I was going with that. So I think this is different. I don't think they'd be against playing together at Ohio State or Michigan, but I think that part of the pitch doesn't need to be front and center like it's going to be this weekend with Ohio State. And I think again, if it doesn't pay off, then everything I'm saying doesn't matter. But I think I like what Michigan's done.
Yeah.
Which is, if they do decide to play together in Ann Arbor, it has never been about getting both Ohio kids. They have never treated them that way. Obviously, it'd be an amazing duo to have, but they're treating it like it's a coincidence that they're both from Ohio, that we're not trying to pitch this as a syncing up duo, right? We want you both individually because of who you are individually, how you play individually. And if you both come, that's awesome. But we're not trying to pretend that, like, you know what I mean? I think that's interesting. We'll see how it plays out again, but big weekend for Ohio State and Michigan. No way around it. I think I'm going to change my order here, because who I was going to talk about next was Devin Baxter, who's committing tonight, but I think it's relevant in the context of this Ohio State visit. Elias Rudolph announced right before we came on here that he will no longer be a part of that June 23rd Ohio State visit. He had a very successful visit to Pitt, was at Miami this weekend. He's announcing he's going to commit on July 3rd. You and I both have future casts in. Obviously good news. He's not making his way to Columbus.
Yeah, no, I don't think Ohio State was really originally involved in the equation heading into the visit. I think this is more of a Michigan Pitt battle, but there was one point in time where Ohio State had some momentum with him. So, and you could have saw a realistic situation, during if he would have taken this visit, where Ohio State could gain some momentum back. But yeah, I mean, anytime you can get Ohio State out of the race for any recruit you're battling for, is a good thing. And, in the terms of Rudolph, I think that pretty much, I know that's made some people inside Michigan's program feel pretty good about where they sit. I think they're feeling pretty good, where things are right now. But now that they have a clear commitment date in mind, and, that Ohio State's getting eliminated, they're feeling pretty good, and I do think it's interesting now that, some defensive ends are starting to come off the board in terms of Michigan's favor as we get into Devin Baxter here shortly. But yeah, I fully expect Rudolph to be part of the class. There's guys like Dominic Nichols that are still out there that I feel good about. Obviously, Jacob Smith, Darian Mayo, who we'll be talking more about here coming up. And then there's a couple other names involved there too. But, space is limited. They're running out. And so, the faster these guys commit, they'll have their spot secured. So, these guys, some of them might be, some of them might be waiting themselves out of a spot if they take this on if they drag this on much longer. But I do think it's intriguing that some names are starting to come off the board here, especially names that are on Michigan's radar.
Yeah, I think there was a thought that Rudolph and then Brian Robinson's the other one are two guys originally from Ohio. I know Rudolph went down, but that Ohio State might get back into with Michigan's edge problem, which is a good problem, which is they have too many dudes they're going after. But maybe Ohio State's just comfortable letting that dust settle. Because like you said, one of the names we've been talking about, Devin Baxter, is now committing tonight at 8. He has been to Rutgers, or I've got this backwards now. Ben to Rutgers was supposed to go to Virginia Tech, or I don't remember which way it was, but either way, he's got another visit coming up between one of those two. I can't remember which was first, but yeah, I mean, obviously coming right out of the visit, probably you've got your future cast in for Baxter. So we're assuming him to go blue tonight. And he's, like you said, the first guy kind of taking a spot.
Yeah. I mean, you're coming off a weekend visit, and that Monday you announce that you're committing. That pretty
usual tell.
Yeah, pretty evident. And the stuff I'm hearing from people makes me feel pretty good that, that this is a done deal to Michigan. So yeah, I feel pretty good that Michigan's going to be the choice here in a couple hours. And just another name off the board, and kind of, clears up the muddy waters a little bit in terms of who are they going to take and why. And obviously Rudolph here in a week or so, or 2 weeks, I should say, we'll kind of clear that up even further. But yeah, he's another guy that's kind of been under the radar, and as Michigan's identified him early and they felt pretty good that they could make some ground when he visited. I mean, and there was some talk that they could probably get him to commit if they push for him. But yeah, obviously the visit went extremely well, and we're probably looking at a commitment here in a couple hours.
Yeah, I was more interested in, I don't want to say was Michigan going to allow him to commit, but that's really how that works sometimes with sorting things out. So I'll be interested to see how the rest of the folks follow through. I think Baxter was a guy that as soon as they got on campus, they were going to win him over. It was just a matter of, was he going to be the first domino, or other dominoes going to be put in place? So obviously that starts tonight. So I think we've kind of been waiting for that first one, because that could cause an interesting effect. Obviously Rudolph on the 3rd, like you said. Another guy who was here this weekend who has a commitment date in place is Jeremiah Beasley. He is committing on the 29th of this month, has been to Michigan State already, going to Missouri next week. You've had your future cast in for a while. I'm there with you. Our boy Rich, who covers Penn State and Rutgers, is in, and then Dylan from Spartans Illustrated also in with Beasley to Michigan. There's been some murmurs, and I think it might just be one. It's been a little while, so I think people get nervous when they don't hear about a guy as much. So there's been some murmurs that maybe Michigan could be worried. he becomes even more important, I guess, arguably, with the loss of a gentleman we'll get to in a little bit with Aaron Childs committing to Florida.
Mhm.
But Beasley's felt blue for a while. Any reason to think that's changed in the last few weeks?
No, especially because he made his visit over the weekend. I mean, yeah, he's a kid in your backyard at Belleville, but I think I think there could be a situation where Missouri coming up could make some noise, but just the relationships that he has with the staff and the commits. I would be very surprised if he were to go elsewhere. Especially after this weekend and how everyone else feels pretty good about it. They've pretty much, a lot of people have considered him a commitment. Commitment. I say that with quotations in for a while now. So, I mean, I can understand why some people would be nervous, but again, I mean, this decision date has been set for months. So, this is not exactly a big surprise how everything is turning out in terms of his visit schedules and things like that. But I mean, I think Michigan did what they needed to do this weekend and just keep doing what it's doing. I mean, that's just keep recruiting him the way they have been. It's been working. And, and by the 29th rolls around, I expect him to pick Michigan. And, as you mentioned, I think that's now suddenly a very important piece to the linebacker room. After one, a guy we'll get to, and with Childs, we were kind of penciling him in until he made a shock decision over the weekend. So now the linebacker position gets really interesting with Beasley. But I mean, I haven't heard anything to make me super concerned. So, I mean, obviously we'll see what happens after this weekend, but I've got no reason to be concerned right now.
And I say arguably becomes more important. And that's not even 100% true. I think they're very different linebackers too. But yeah, I've said for a long time too, Beasley in the same way, West and Scott are for Ohio State. I do feel like Beasley, of course, was an MSU lean at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a kid you could have seen at MSU in the past. Getting him's a big deal. And if you want to start controversy, by the way, tweet a picture of Jeremiah Beasley wearing Mays jersey with white pants. Because my phone has been blowing up all day with people with very passionate opinions about the Mays jersey with white pants look. So my bad.
Ridiculous.
I just had never seen it before. So I was like, oh, it's interesting. What do you guys think of this? And whoo, got some opinions. So
everyone does.
Yeah. Victor jumping in late. Any talk around Bryce West visiting during the week this week? Yeah, we hit that up at the top of the show. Have not confirmed yet, but yeah, circle back either on YouTube. You can stream it back, or again on our podcast. You can catch that part of the conversation. Another guy, no commit date yet in place. Feels like, I don't want to use the word imminent, but it's coming soon. You had reported on Friday that Jordan Shipp was going to make the trip last weekend, join his teammates Jaden Davis and Channing Goodwin in Ann Arbor for that visit. He's going to North Carolina this weekend, been to NC State. Feels like that's going to be when it's time to sit down and possibly pull the trigger.
Yeah, I thought that was a big deal that he made the trip. As I said on our message boards, I don't think it was a make or break situation, that if he didn't make the trip, that it would be a killer. But I think it goes a long way with Michigan's standing. I think NC State is probably his second best relationship. Because I say Michigan is the first because he's friendly with the coaching staff, but when you factor in two of his teammates already committed to the program, I think that that automatically equals out to being the best relationship that he has. He's got a lot of allies in his corner in terms of Michigan. So North Carolina, I think that the North Carolina schools have a good shot, to keep him home. But again, when you're talking from a relationship standpoint, I mean, I don't think it gets better than what he'll have at Michigan. Two high school teammates, your high school quarterback, potentially throwing to you.
And close friends too. This isn't just like,
right. They're not.
They happen to be teammates. They're
right.
good friends.
Yeah, no, and they travel around everywhere together. So yeah, I think from a relationship standpoint alone, I mean, you got to like where Michigan sits. But coming into that weekend visit, him making the trip, that's big time for me personally. So
yeah,
I still feel pretty good about Michigan's shot there.
I've said this before, like you can tell when a kid feels like he has home, right? Being able to tag along, if that's the negative way you want to frame that, and then being included. Again, I think the whole point of having all the commits wasn't a hard press per se, as it was to treat these dudes like they're already part of the family.
Yep.
And you pointed out, and I had just posted somebody's comment, but they did kind of that huddle shot of what the offense is going to look like with the dudes that have committed, and Ship was a part of that.
Yep.
And that's not an accident, right? And we said the same thing with Aaron Scott. I don't think there was pressure. I think they just treated him like he's already a part of the group kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
We've said that with quite a few people. Bryce Underwood's a dude we bring up all the time, but when you feel like you can just kind of show up, that's a pretty good sign, right?
Yeah.
I'd be a lot more worried about North Carolina if Longo was still there. I think him going to Wisconsin really hurt them in Ship's recruitment. But we'll see. I can understand him sticking around, but yeah, that one kind of feels like it could happen any moment. A guy who felt like it could happen any moment and then dropped this weekend. Running back from Las Vegas, Micah Kahapana. We were not shocked by his commitment. Obviously, the ripple effect, we'll kind of get into that in a second here. But this is a guy I think a lot of people raise their eyebrows and maybe scoff online, like, oh, look at his ranking. Oh, look at his offer list. And then people show him his stats of 70 carries for 1,000 yards, 15 touchdowns. And, oh, he plays at Gishop. I am killing it today. Bishop Gorman, national powerhouse. And, oh, let me check out these huddle highlights. Oh, my God. Right. So he's one of those dudes you dig in a little more and you realize, I hate saying cliche here, like, oh, trust the coaches. But this is one where you got to trust Mike Hart. He clearly zeroed in a Kahapana. He came in, he felt at home, and they both felt ready to say, hey, let's close this deal. And he is coming to Ann Arbor.
Yeah. I think it was only a matter of time when this was going to happen. But, I do think it's kind of the timing wise is kind of interesting. I don't know. I don't know his deal, whether he actually committed on his visit or not. There's kind of mixed opinions on whether that actually happened. But I do think the timing of it was interesting. I know the guy was just wanting to get this process over with. He was kind of really tired of it by the time that his Michigan visit was wrapped up. I mean, he kind of knew where he wanted to go and, really loved his time in Ann Arbor. So I think the timing of it is interesting. But again, when and when Michigan got their guy, they wanted him. He was on the top of their board. Really looking back, if he wasn't, they wouldn't have taken his commitment or wouldn't have allowed him to go public with it. So I think it's an underrated prospect. Obviously, doesn't really do the camp scene, doesn't really get much attention. But I think this season you'll see a lot of attention coming his way. I mean, you're talking about being the lead back at Bishop Gorman. His stats are like video game numbers last year. So, with the minimal carries he had last year, I mean, that number's only going to go up. So, I mean, I think he's got a really unique skill set compared to Marshall. I mean, we're not talking about two like players here. We're kind of talking about two different styles. I think Marshall's more of the physical runner, but Kapana is very capable of doing that himself. But I think he's more of the speedier, athletic, get out in space type of guy who can run around you, and while Marshall can kind of run through you. So, Mike Hart hasn't given me a reason to doubt him yet. I mean, we'll see whether the Cabana and Ben Hall and those guys work out. But when you're talking from what you're really ideally looking for is kind of to replicate what you have with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, I think you've got that kind of style. You had that kind of style with Cabana and Hall, with Hall being more of the physical guy and Cabana being more of a speedier guy. But now, you've got that same kind of flair. You've got the Marshall who looks like a Blake Corum. We've got.
I say, just say it. He's Blake Corum, dude.
Yeah, he's got like ham hock sized thighs. It's ridiculous what that guy looks like. But yeah, I think they went out and identified their guy, and they've got their guys up. They've got 2 guys that they'll carry the rest of the way here. So I do think Capana's gonna see his recruiting stock rise a little bit, just because out of exposure because he's a Michigan commit, and B,
Blue wall.
Yeah, yeah, right. He's gonna see more. He's just gonna see more time on the field. He's gonna get more carries. He's gonna get more.
And
exposure.
he's bigger. He's already bigger than he played last year, like a decent amount.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously going to bleed into the next part of this conversation because the two have been linked the whole time, and that's Taylor Tatum, who was scheduled to take an official visit this weekend. We had heard pre-Kahapana commitment that was still going to happen. I don't think we expect it to now, for Tatum to come out here. I think we've just learned a lot in the last few weeks about this entire recruitment. First off, the context matters. You've got Jordan Marshall. If you're taking Kahapana's commitment and you don't have Jordan Marshall yet, and Tatum's supposed to come this weekend, then I might be a little like, that's weird. But you have Jordan Marshall, right? And you don't hate the idea of trying to pair Taylor Tatum with him. They've talked about, would they go 3 for this 3? I think they would have, but I don't know that Tatum wanted to do that, right? And actually, in some way, it's looking like maybe Marshall committing first was a bigger deal than we initially thought too. Michigan had some obstacles to overcome in terms of Tatum potentially coming north, leaving the South, et cetera, et cetera. But if we talk about relationships all the time, and I think Mike Hart has a really good feel, right? Mm-hmm. He's a really good feel on these recruitments. And if him and Tatum were kind of growing apart in the last few weeks, or not talking as much or whatever, and Kahapana's there, you go get the dude. You just do. And I love the pairing together. I could go on and on about his skill set and what I think, how he fits and blah, blah, blah. But again, as the second running back, like, don't forget you have Jordan Marshall already. Just don't, you know, he reminds me a little bit of CJ Stokes. He could be like an AJ Henning type in this offense. You know, our board asked us for comps, and I was like, man, I don't want to put this type of ceiling on him because Javid Best was literally an Olympic track star. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like the way they play, like he could be that, like that could be, I don't want to not say his ceiling, but like that's how good this kid could be. He's got serious potential, man. Mm-hmm. And again, trust the coaches. They're not going to take the commitment if they don't know what that means and if they're not ready for him to join in. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And yeah, it'll be interesting to see, you know, theoretically going into 24, we'll have to see the development of CJ Stokes. We'll have to see if Benjamin Hall can turn a strong spring into a strong freshman year where you start to get optimistic about him in his sophomore season. He's got kind of that Corum bell cow potential as well. Cole Cabana, more speeder type guy. And then Jordan Marshall and then Micah Cabana. That's your 5 guys in the running back room next year, which again, I can't wait to talk about Cole Cabana and Micah Cabana at the same time. What a blast that's going to be.
No, and to go back onto player comps real quick. I saw on Twitter, and I wish I could remember who tweeted it, but someone tweeted out a video of Capana's highlights with Raheem Mostert.
Oh,
and I thought that was an excellent comparison.
Purdue.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. I hate player comps. I'm not good at it, and I don't pretend to know who is who and you know, stuff like that, and comparing games and stuff. But I thought, you know, just looking at the clips, comparing the two, I think that was a good comparison. And obviously, you can make anyone look good when it comes to highlights. I mean, you're not gonna be having
highlights, no lowlights.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You're not gonna have someone show a mixtape of you fumbling the ball every snap. So
I will say I've seen a couple where I think the kids are trying to get to that 10-minute mark, and we threw in a couple they probably shouldn't have. But yeah.
But to go back on Tatum too, I mean, if you've been following us and you've been on our message board, the fact that we're saying that this recruitment is done, it shouldn't come as a surprise. I mean, we've said as soon as Capana is a take, their pursuit of Tatum is over. And now their pursuit of Tatum is done. It's done. I mean, maybe, you know, it's done. It's not going to, you know, none of this it's not going to happen. And, you know, we've been saying this for a while now that As soon as Capano was a take, it's done. So
I think before the visit, yes.
Yeah.
I've been more bullish on Tatum to Michigan than probably anybody. I had reasons for that. And again, I really thought the official visit was going to be a big deal. And I said I wasn't going to back off my prediction until the official visit either was canceled or happened. And obviously now we don't expect him to come. So I think that's a game changer. I would have been interested to see if Kahapana's commitment is pushed back, Tatum makes his visit, whatever. Obviously there's a reason these things have happened in the order that they've happened. Right. You're 100% right on that. So, I feel like I could beat that subject down, but I get the last thing I would say on that is terms, and this is much more general, but let's remember these guys are high schoolers. I think people are projecting what they are now onto their entire college career. We've talked about this with some of the camp stuff we might get to later with a certain quarterback commit, but like dudes get better, right? Yeah. They go to college, they grow more, they go from kid body to man. They get coached up by great coaches like Mike Hart. Like people forget Blake Corum was missing the same lanes and making similar mistakes that CJ Stokes did last year. He was a freshman. Like guys develop, right? So I think when you look at a guy and you talk about his fit and you think about what a coach likes to do, that's where you kind of could project out and be like, okay, I see what they're going for with a dude like Kahapana. So anyway, so we kind of talked about some of the bad. We'll go right into it now. Tatum obviously looks like he's off the board, but I don't think that's a huge negative thing. I love the pairing of Marshall and Kahapana. Boot Carter commits to Tennessee. We'll get to that in a second. I don't think that was a shock in any way. We've framed that one the same way for weeks, and we're going to continue to frame it the same way. We'll get to that in a second. There's no way to pretend Aaron Childs wasn't a shock. We've already kind of talked on that. This one kind of left a bad taste in people's mouths, man. This is interesting. He was supposed to be coming this weekend, and he commits on his Florida visit, and now what?
Yeah, no, this one upset some people in Schembechler for sure. I mean, it upset some people to the point where they're not going to pursue him at this point. Maybe it comes back around when, if things go south during the season. I mean, you just simply can't predict where this thing is, how the season's going to play out, especially for Florida. Who knows? Maybe they stink. And, some guys want to jump off board and stuff. But, I mean, there's no denying the level of shock factor that came out of Childs visiting or committing. Man, I'm having issues.
I passed it on to you.
Yeah, no. There's no lack. I mean, it was a shock that Childs committed when he did. I think pretty much everyone was penciling him in as a commit after this coming weekend where he was supposed to visit. That's no longer happening. He's not even on their boards right now. And, and I think the fact we'll see what happens. Maybe it comes back around towards December, but right now they're just kind of moving on and, saying, if you don't want to be here, that's fine. We don't want you. So, it is what it is.
And look, Michigan's not stupid. Okay, this is a new era, right? I mean, I remember before Urban Meyer got to the Big Ten, it was like if you visited another Big Ten school, like, what are you doing? You can't do that, right? And there are players that are kind of in that. I don't like using silent commit. I hate that term. I hate it a lot because even a regular commitment isn't anything till you sign. What is a silent commitment, right? But in terms of like a program feeling like a guy's penciled in, both sides want honest and open communication, right? That's all this comes down to. And I think Michigan felt like they could have had Childs in the fold weeks ago. And we're told that, hey, we're going to take these visits. We're going to give you the last one. We're going to come with our teammate, Darian Mayo, right? And then, maybe we'll close this thing down. Let's go from there. And obviously nobody thought he's going to Florida and committing right away. And I think that break in communication of like, hey, we're penciling you in. Maybe we're not pursuing certain dudes. And this isn't like, oh, Michigan's dumb for thinking that. That's not what I'm saying, right? Michigan has options. They're prepared. I'm not saying that. But just in terms of like, oh, I don't want to I don't want to come off like sour grapes, and I don't want to attack the character of the kid at all, because him and his family did what they think is best for them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just in terms of what Michigan thought was happening, this isn't what they thought was happening.
Right.
And I think having him come this weekend again with Darian Mayo there just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. And maybe after some time they'll circle back, but like you said, but yeah, this just didn't go the way you expected. You know, the opposite of that is Boo Carter. Mm-hmm. Michigan knew where Tennessee was in this recruitment. They knew where they were in this recruitment. I think both programs knew that his commitment, which was likely going to be Tennessee, like we had said, maybe they got it to a coin flip after that OV. Of course, OVs again go really well. Michigan felt good about Carter, but we kept saying the day of the commitment, nobody really knew. Like, this could go either way, but it felt like the tea leaf said Tennessee. He commits to the Volunteers. There's a good chance this recruitment continues until signing day, right?
No, yeah, absolutely.
There's no bridges burned here. There's nothing bad. Kid picked Tennessee. They knew where they were in the recruitment. Hey, we're going to keep in touch, though.
Yeah,
right.
No, for sure. No,
so there's a way you can do this and it not feel bad.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think Carter had better relationships with the commits than Childs really did. I didn't really hear much about Childs and his relationship with the commits. And that's not saying that
you can see that relationship on social media the last
couple
days.
Oh yeah.
They're throwing some shade at each other.
You know, it is what it is. But sure. I mean, it really isn't. It's not a shock that Carter picked Tennessee, and I don't expect this to be the last time you'll ever hear of him. You know, I think Michigan is going to be right in this thing. You know, they're going to be working hard. I mean, it's a bummer that he took his, I guess, looking back, you know, in hindsight, it's a bummer that he took his official visit when he did, because you can't give him another one during the season if he wants to take his visit. So he'll have to come on his own dime. But at the same time, you're also, you know, you got to take that shot. You know, he had his whole family here in Ann Arbor. You know, you have to take that shot. So, yeah, I mean, I don't expect this to be over by any means. I really think we're going to hear about Boo Carter leading right up until signing day. And, you know, you never know. Michigan might find itself right back in this thing and maybe land him. You just don't know. Can't predict the future, but you know, what we can predict is that Michigan is not going to let this one go. And I think it's just, as you mentioned, it's just a relationship standpoint, the open communication between both parties, and there was no surprise. You know, there was no, you know, doing something behind another's back, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, not a huge shock that he ended up picking Tennessee, but this won't be the last time you hear Boo Carter's name mentioned.
Yeah, he's one where I think either program exceeding or not meeting expectations on the field this year could have an interesting impact. Michigan was pitching him on a very unique role. Kind of, we heard. I was wondering with Chris Partridge back, we were going to start hear about the Jabril Peppers type role, right? Kind of that Swiss Army knife guy. But hey, maybe Partridge, like you said, some more relationship building. Who knows? But I think that's one door shut for now, one door cracked open. That's how I would.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good way to characterize it for sure.
So another guy that came that on our last show, we didn't really talk about him much because it just kind of felt like, all right, Michigan's at 5 offensive linemen. We think they're probably going to go to 6 with Bennett Warren. Michael Looney's a really good prospect, obviously. I mean, the dude's offer list is stupid. He's been to Clemson, Florida. He's going to Georgia. He's got a date on the books for Bama in October. Just a monster prospect. But he comes in, and this is going Michigan's way. Not like, hey, OVs always go well. Like, you've got a future cast in for him. Jeff Ketchum, about as good as it gets in the South, runs the Orange Blood site for Texas.
Yep.
Has switched Uni over to Michigan. So this isn't just like Michigan guys overreacting to an OV. So at this point, between him and then obviously, I mean, we'll just group them together. Bennett Warren as well. You and I both have future casting for him, and then Landon from Aggie Yell. Again, Texas A&M site, who kind of felt like that's where he was leaning, right? So these are 2 Texas guys like Blake Frazier, and the 2 Texas dudes who are following him closely both think it's Michigan. So Sharon Moore's going to try and put 7 dudes in this class.
It's a possibility.
Crazy.
I spoke to someone last night, and I asked him. I asked the guy straight up. I'm like, what's going to happen? If Uini decides to commit, and it's certainly looking like he's going to, and then you've got Bennett Warren wanting to commit in July. Do you take both? Do you say first come, first serve? And the general idea is like, well, we're going to have to decide here soon. And, it's going to be a tough call to make. How do you say no to both guys that want to come? And really,
I don't think you can.
I don't think you can.
But I also don't think you can upset we talk about how close knit this group is, right? Like, these are tackle prospects. So the two dudes I think this is going to play into the most are Andrew Sprague and Ben Roebuck.
Yeah. But at the same time, though, those guys are, vetting these prospects. I mean, they're very much involved in the discussions with the coaches
for
too.
sure.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. I think you'd have to have some sort of, I guess, consensus agreement amongst the commits saying, hey, I'm okay with taking both or one or the other. So I just don't see how you can turn both away. It's a tough. I mean, it's a tough. I have nothing to do with this decision, and I'm sitting here going, man, what do you do?
Yeah.
I would hate to be in Sharon Moore's shoes to try and figure out if they're gonna say, hey, the first one takes it, gets it, or I don't know. I don't envy that position at all.
I do think Michigan is always prepared for these situations before they happen because of the way they recruit and who they recruit. And a lot of that comes back to, again, just honesty.
Yeah.
Right. Michigan doesn't promise anything. They push competition. Right. And again, now I think what you have with 21 and 22 is the ability to point to your plan in action and results. Right. So I don't have to say this is what I want to do or this is how we're going to be. You can say this is what we've done. And I think when you talk about the offensive line, when you talk about not just what they've done from a development standpoint, what they've done in success with the Joe Moore Award, Zach Zinter and Trevor Keegan coming back, I think is a big statement. Drake Nugent, Ladarius Henderson, Miles Hinton transferring in after Olu came in and won all the awards he won. Big deal. No one transferring out from that offensive line within like the top 15 to 16 prospects with those dudes coming in and coming back. That's a big statement. Right. Mm-hmm. And they expect to lose possibly the entire starting offensive line next year via the draft and whatever. So there's going to be opportunities. There could be some transfer portal movement. And maybe that's part of it too, is like, dude, come in and fight for a year or two. And if you want to leave, okay. Like maybe that's just part of it, but you've got a chance to compete for a spot in Sharon Moore's offense on his offensive line, the best in the nation. If it doesn't work out, okay, but at least take your shot. And maybe that's the pitch. And if it is, these guys committing already know there's going to be competition. Cool, man. Bring them in. Right. That could be the attitude. And in terms of, how do you say no? I don't think you can. I love this offensive line unit. And again, we don't know floor and ceiling till somebody gets on campus, but there's a really good chance those two would be the best two offensive linemen in this class if they committed.
Yeah, it's a very good chance.
I like Frazier a lot. I like Roebuck a lot. I like Sprague. These dudes are monsters. All of them are 6'7", 6'8".
Mm-hmm.
And then, the only one is Jake, and he's supposed to be a center.
Yep.
You don't want a 6'8" head in front of a quarterback.
Yeah, right.
But the rest of these dudes, they're 6'7", 6'8", 300 pounds, man.
Yeah.
It's incredible what Moore's doing. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think you can say no to Michael. I think Bennett Warren, again, maybe his opinion changes with some of this. I don't know, but that's another guy that comes in. And you've got 4 tackles in this group. I think Frazier slides inside. Luke Hamilton slides inside. And again, Jake's your center. But unreal. Just reload. Right? Pretty impressive. Yeah. So the gentleman's still coming this weekend. And we're going to have to frame this in the context of Childs a little bit because they are teammates together over at Good Counsel in Maryland. Another edge prospect. Kind of everything come together. We talked about edge guys and visits and blah, blah, blah. this has been, I'm going to call it a quiet recruitment. There's no predictions on Darren Mayo. I think Michigan might feel good with him coming in, but A, where do we think this recruitment is? And B, is Childs committing to Florida an impact on him, or does it have any impact on him?
I mean, I don't know for sure. I haven't gotten anything from the immediate aftermath saying, "Oh, watch out for Mayo." I haven't gotten anything on that. So I can't sit here and say yes or no definitively. What I can say is that, I think it's the best case scenario is that he comes in and takes his visit, which I don't think that's under any question or anything like that. I do expect him to come in. I don't know. I don't really know how this will impact him.
Well, all right, fine, Josh.
I mean, I guess like
I'm not shocked you don't know. Like I said, this has been a very quiet recruitment.
Yeah,
I'm not shocked.
It is. And there hasn't been anything about saying, hey, wherever Childs is going to go, Mayo is going to follow him.
Mm-hmm.
There's been none of that. So again, as we mentioned with Scott and Wes at the top of the show, I think this weekend will have a lot of say about where this one's headed. I think the Michigan staff has felt really good. I know that Mayo is really had a really good relationship with Michigan, really loves Mike Elston, and a good visit, as we all expect will happen, should probably kind of legitimize that fact of his interest in the program. So, excuse me, I don't think the immediate aftermath of Childs is to sit here and say and to freak out and be concerned. It's a legitimate question to ask, and you have to ask that question, absolutely. But I don't think there's been any evidence out there that the two are directly related or not. I mean, teammates always help, when you can talk about the Providence Day kids that are coming to Michigan, but they don't necessarily, it's not a guarantee all the time. So, I think this week, I mean, unless we hear something during the week, I think this weekend's going to be a big tell about where this one's headed. I know Michigan is confident. No, there's a pretty quiet confidence about Mayo there, but I mean, the kid is quiet. He doesn't really, he doesn't seem to be one that enjoys the process all that much and has kept things quiet. So maybe that's a good thing in Michigan's favor. But I think this weekend will be a big tell for sure.
Yeah, he's been to Clemson, Ohio State, and USC. Heading to Michigan this weekend. Michigan's in on a lot of edge guys. I think they'll feel good about whoever they get. Mayo is I almost had a terrible pun there. But Mayo's really high up on the top there. Mm-hmm. Mayo's your strong side guy. He's a dude that has the size and speed and power and athletic ability that, like, I know you hate player comps, and I do too, because I don't want to say he's like Aiden Hutchinson, because I'm not saying he's going to be the number 2 pick in the NFL draft.
Right.
But in terms of just the combo of skills, Mayo's a freak, man. He is. And he's a guy that just high motor. He's a great fit for this team. And Michigan would love to get him. And then if they don't, when you look at the programs he's talking to, you'd obviously hate for him to end up in Columbus if he doesn't come to Ann Arbor too, right? Like that kind of situation. So we'll see how it goes. It just kind of felt like it was always going to be, again, him and Childs are not, like you said, similar to Scott and West. I know they're not teammates. They're 2 Ohio guys. Mm-hmm. It's never really been framed in this context of they're going to play together. Like that's never really been there. But I think in the back of your mind, you just always felt like Childs was penciled into this class, and having him on this visit with Mayo was going to be a good thing or whatever. So that's maybe kind of where some of that is. But yeah, we'll obviously circle back next week to talk about his visit and a couple of these other folks that we think are maybe on the edge, or some things we can learn. Obviously Beasley going to Missouri and some other things as well. The last thing I wanted to touch on, you got a little fired up last time we brought this up. So Jaden Davis, current Michigan commit, was named to the Elite 11 for 2023 this year after, some I don't even know what I want to call it, just chaos of opinions He's been a polarizing prospect for a while. But over the weekend, there was stuff coming out good and bad. And of course, every fan base, I mean, him and Aaron Noland at Ohio State and Dylan Raiola, who's now at Georgia, and CJ Carr, who's at Notre Dame. I mean, these guys are going to be linked together for a very long time because of how their recruitments went, right? But you've been pretty passionate about not caring what a guy does in shorts, right? Come Sunday or Saturday, whatever the third day was, I don't even remember now. They did 7-on-7. They played some actual football, and Jaden Davis was the number one performer. He was 11 of 15, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. I'm not shocked by that when it came to football, that Jaden Davis was really good. I've said over and over again that Davis is a guy who is really good at the things that are either hard to teach or you can't teach. On the field, that's literally the most difficult throws, which is the 10-yard out to the sideline, the corner in the end zone, right? And he's a leader and he's a hard worker. Everybody who speaks to him or watches an interview with him is just blown away by his maturity, his articulation, and just the way he looks at things. His football IQ, he runs a difficult offense. I've talked about this. He's under center. He's in pistol. He's in shotgun. He's making pre and post snap reads, right? He might not show this freakish arm talent that they're going to come in and then have to get coached up. But like, he could play as a freshman legitimately because he's so good at the things that are hard for quarterbacks to be good at. He's the anti-Joe Milton. I don't mean that as a shot on Milton, but Milton could have been in some type of carnival show, like selling tickets for how far he could throw a football. Dude just had an absolute cannon, but they knew he was raw, that he didn't play in a complex offense. It is probably going to take a few years for him to take off. And here we are. He might be a stud this year at Tennessee years and years later, whatever. But anyway, oh my God, he made the Elite 11. Life goes on. And the dude was great when it came to playing actual football. What is this obsession with nitpicking Jaden Davis?
Because he goes to Michigan, or he's committed to Michigan.
It's crazy.
That's it. Jaden Davis is an elite quarterback. Wow. Shocker. Here, breaking news here on the Maize and Blue Review on YouTube. Jaden Davis is an elite quarterback. You don't need a silly display in shorts and a t-shirt to understand that the guy can play ball when it matters in game-like settings. You've got a guy throwing a pass down the field to a guy streaking in shorts and shirts down the field, and you're not as accurate. However, in a game-like setting, you are. Well, duh. I mean, that's what he is. That's what Jaden Davis is. He's a gamer. He's a game-like quarterback who performs well under pressure in games. And whatever he does in shorts, in shirts, I don't care. I do not care. The whole event is stupid. It's just a way. It's just a way for fan bases to get on Twitter or social media and to talk about how their teenage quarterback is better than your teenage quarterback. It's ridiculous. It doesn't have any impact on what this player is going to do once you put pads on him and put him out in a college offense. It has nothing to do. Their criteria of what they're looking for, it has no bearing on what a college coach is looking for. And Jaden Davis is a 5-star quarterback for a reason. And, say what you will about him sliding down the rankings or whatever, but the guy can play, and he's proven to be one of the elite in the country with the rest of his 12 quarterbacks in the Elite 11. What? There's 12 quarterbacks in Elite 11. Make it make sense. The whole thing is stupid. It's just for clicks. It's just to make your, the silly little clips on Twitter saying, "Oh, Aaron Noland is on fire." Fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji, as he throws a pass to a slanting wide receiver with nothing out there. It's stupid. It's dumb. It makes no sense. It's just for social media, and just give me what the quarterback does in pads. The dude won a state championship in one of the toughest leagues in the state. That's all that matters to me. It's all that matters. And we'll see him do the same thing when he's at Michigan. He's going to win games. And no one's going to give a damn about what he did out in California one weekend in June when he was a senior in high school, or a rising senior in high school. It's stupid. It's dumb. I hate it. But I get it. At the same time, I get it. You have to scout these guys. But
look, if he won Elite 11, we'd be propping him up for it. I'm not saying we wouldn't be.
No, but
right? But here's my thing. He went into last year, and what was the biggest knock on him? His completion percentage and his accuracy, right? And the dude worked his tail off and posts was it 73% completion percentage last year? Wins North Carolina Gatorade Player of the Year, wins a state championship, does all these things, literally looks people in the face like, oh, this is my problem. This is what you have against me. Boom. It's a strength now, right? And people are blown away by that. 5-star, number 1 quarterback in the class at one point. And then it's like the season stopped. And some of these other dudes started committing to bigger schools, like Aaron Nolan's rise up the recruiting rankings, right? Like, oh, we just missed him, but since Ohio State got him, now he's better, right? Because of these camp things. Like, that's all that kills me. It can be part of the equation, but please, can we stop ignoring what he did on the field, right? And can we stop talking about, again, I brought this up earlier with Kahapana. Why are we acting like development stops at high school?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
When in the world did this start happening where it's like, this is who he is now, right? I've talked about the arm power thing. I think it's a simple mechanic issue. The kid doesn't use his feet a ton. He throws a lot with his arm. And some of it's deliberate. You can tell it's because he has touch. You can tell how he uses his feet and hips to take off of throws a little bit and get a little air under it, whatever. There's no doubt in my mind when Kirk Campbell and former 14-year NFL quarterback Jim Harbaugh get a hold of him, we're going to see some improvement. With JJ, it was the opposite, right? It was reeling him in a little bit, getting a little bit more touch, not always throwing the fastball. Davis might be the opposite, but these dudes can get developed. They're not done yet, right? So like maybe somebody has a larger skill set than him right now. I don't know. I love what he has upstairs. I love his football IQ. I love his character. I love his leadership. And I love, like you said, the way he reacts to pressure. I'm somebody who doesn't think clutch is fake. I know people talk about there's no such thing as clutch. I've seen clutch. There's just dudes that show up sometimes. They play better when the heat's on, man. And the it factor, all these cliches. Jaden Davis has it to me. And maybe I'll be wrong when he gets here. I don't know. But I'm just sick of people trying to bury the kid. I think it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's weird behavior.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But, I want to point this out, too. Why does winning a high school state championship matter? Show me a 5-star quarterback who's a loser and doesn't win any games. Then, what? You want a quarterback that wins. You want a quarterback that can show they can lead a team that wins. Yes, it matters. Yeah, I want to recruit a quarterback who's lost every game of his high school career, plays in a crap farm division out in rural Montana, and I want to recruit him to Michigan, who's lost every game, who has no sense of winning and no sense of being a leader. It doesn't make any sense. Showing that you're a winner it shows you that you can win. You know what it takes to win. It's ridiculous. Yes, showing a high school you can win a championship matters. It's showing that you can win.
There's a really good quarterback on a bad team in Montana that you just hurt his feelings.
Well, yeah, that's too bad. That's too bad. Maybe we'll get a scout out there to see him or something.
Oh my God. I think I'm literally going to look up state rankings for Montana and try and find the QB.
I can't remember. I don't know when the last decent quarterback from Montana has been, other than Joe Montana.
Damn it, you beat me to it. Dude, now I've got the water boy in my head. Joe Montana. He's a quarterback, you idiot. I said Joe Montana.
It's just the whole thing is ridiculous. The argument is ridiculous. I don't get the obsession with these kids and the need to follow them around everywhere too. That's weird.
There's just more access than there's ever been.
Yeah, which I
There's
understand.
more of these competitions. I think NIL is a big factor too, because NIL bleeds into high school, and these guys are building brands, if you will, as sophomores.
Yeah, I mean, which they have a right to do that, but
100%.
Recruiting is a dirty game.
Dude, I have said this a million times. I have never held the culture of recruiting against the players. It's frankly people like us who have created it. Not literally, but like this industry sometimes is a part of it, but like social media and the way people chase after these recruits and put them up. I've said forever, if I was a 17-year-old, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, I would have been a prick, dude. I mean, and he chased a bag. You're damn right I chased a bag, dude.
Yeah.
What? Okay. Like I think it's, and that's why, like, I love, again, Davis. I come back to that. You said it before too, and we've talked about his family before, but man, props to his parents. Having that head on your shoulders when you've been put on the platform you've been put on at such a young age, I think that's impressive.
Oh yeah,
and maybe
parents for sure.
And maybe that doesn't show up in the scouting report of passing or whatever, but like we talk to kids and coaches and whatever, and like, again, I don't blame some 16-year-olds for feeling and behaving the way they do, because I know I would have been the same or worse. The thing with, I always brought up Justin Bieber. Everyone's like, he needs better people around him. He's 18. He shouldn't be behaving like this. Like, what would you do if you were that rich when you were 18 and the hottest thing in the world? Like, he's going to bars? Yeah, they let him.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Right? The way you act is just as important as the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You gotta think about that part. And to speak on Jaden Davis's parents, I mean, they've done a great job raising him, and the kid gets it. From a mental aspect, that's important too in a quarterback. You want a quarterback that gets it from a mental aspect, so he can process things, process things like a normal person.
Well, and we talked about it with the recruitment too, and some people were frustrated because they felt like it wasn't going at the pace they wanted. I kept saying, like, this isn't a dude that's dragging out the attention getting part of recruiting. He's being very deliberate in his decision making.
Yeah.
And we said when he commits, he's gonna be done. And he made sure that the relationships were where they were, and he was finding the best spot for him. And when he was ready, he committed. And now look, like, he's Michigan. It's done, right?
Yeah, and I think, and also at the same time too, I do think Michigan stumbled over themselves a little bit, which drew out the process.
Thank you, Kirk Campbell.
Kirk Campbell deserves a lot of credit for that too. But yeah, I think this one was trending towards Michigan before that whole offseason debacle happened, and which kind of stretched out the process a little bit.
100%.
But your point still remains. It's still valid. I mean, he was just making sure all his boxes were checked.
I just appreciate you turning us back to Davis so we didn't have to finish on Justin Bieber. Well done.
Yeah, sure.
But all right. All right. So that's going to wrap it up for us this week. We appreciate you joining us on Monday. All goals will be for us to be live again Sunday at 6:00 on our YouTube channel. You can search Maize and Blue Review. Find us there. Make sure you like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you know when we go live. You can join us in the comment section, be a part of the conversation. If not, make sure you are heading over to michigan.rivals.com. If you're not already a part of our community, why? Now is the time to join. Again, like I always say, we love joining you guys on these podcasts, but you can be the first to hear a lot of this intel over at michigan.rivals.com. As always, I am Trevor McCue, have been joined by Josh Henschke, and this has been Hail to the Podcast.